how to use Enchantment. Now I'm just going to show you what I would do for this particular picture. I'm just going to kind of go in order as how my brain works so you guys can see. This is going to be very informal and it's just going to show you how my thought process works for editing. So here's my straight out of camera image. When I see this image, it's properly exposed. There weren't any blown highlights, maybe a tiny bit in the snow. It's pretty important that you get your images accurate within camera, your white balance, all those sorts of things fixed in RAW first if you did have any errors. Always keep in mind actions are meant to enhance your photos, not fix them. So you need to start with good, strong photography first, and then you can have some more fun. Okay, so for this particular photo, I want to bring everything out and pop everything. There's so many tones in this picture. There's some shiny water right here that we can emphasize the shine on. Her skin looks great. It's just, there's so many fun things we could do for this photo. A lot of times I will just run Emily's basic workflow and that's it. I like simple, clean for the majority of my images. I do like to have a lot of fun. Oh, my mouse battery's low. I do like to have a lot of fun sometimes, and that's what these actions are for. So let's go ahead and start with my basic workflow, and I'll show you what happens when I use this. There we go. So there's the before and the after. You could leave it like this if you wanted to leave the edit like this. I think it's a little bit bright through here. So what I would do is turn down some of these layers, maybe the center light, turn that layer off, or you can pull down the opacity. You can play with all these layers as you want. Maybe turn down the lighten layer, those sorts of things. What I would do is cap this off with bring it forward, which I'll show you later, and we could call it a day with this one. But for the sake of the action set, I'm going to keep moving on. So what I would probably do to start is go to dramatize. These are the beginner basic enhancements, and you don't have to do these first. This is just what I do. So there's dramatize. It pulled everything a little bit forward and everything's a little bit poppier. You can see the shadows and the midtones have been raised a little bit. The highlights have been emphasized as well. What I'm going to do is pull down the opacity of dramatize. I really don't like to have too much drama on her skin, and I also think it made the whites too bright. So I'm going to go to my brush tool over here. I'm going to set the opacity to about 40%. You can just type 40, and it will change the opacity, a little trick. And I'm going to brush that off of her face. Remember, if you have a black brush, that takes off and white paints on. So the white layer masks means everything is exposed and the black's going to paint it off. So there's dramatize. There's before and after. Now I like to flatten every time between each of these actions. You don't have to. I just like to do that and I'll show you why. I go to my history panel and I'll take a snapshot. So that way I can come back to this later if I decide that something I did later I just didn't really like that much. And I have it in my history panel. So I didn't lose that step of my editing process. So let's go ahead and flatten my image here. Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use my absolute favorite secret trick, and that's in the magical enhancements, and that's called Spellbound. For the sake of this video, let's pretend that I had done everything to her skin. You could run soft skin on this at a low opacity. I would not do the catch lights or the darker eyelashes. It's too far away. Those are more for up-close portraits, but with those, just keep in mind that you want to use those at a pretty low opacity. You don't want somebody to look fake, and never ever put fake catch lights in people's eyes. It just looks totally tacky. Just don't do it. Just try to get it correctly done in camera. So we're going to go ahead and run Spellbound now to make it a little bit magical. This is the whole thing behind Enchantment. Look at that. It's my secret. I'm so excited about it. Okay, there's it off and on. Now, it's too bright here in the highlights and on her face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask that off a little bit. I do have a selective darkening layer in here that you can kind of darken some of the shadows and midtones if you wanted to. We don't need to for this image because we're going to do some fun stuff after this. So let's go ahead and get your brush tool. Black. We're going to mask this off, so I'm going to put the opacity still at about 40%. I don't like to do 100 because I like to gradually take it off and see what I'm doing. If you do 100%, it can be a little bit too drastic immediately. Make sure you have a soft brush, and I think that looks pretty good. There's off and on. That's Spellbound. That's the whole look behind this whole picture. So I'm going to take a snapshot in my history panel, flatten it, Now, next, I will run one of the enhancements. For this one, I think that I want to run Misty Wood. It's my absolute favorite in this whole set for outdoor images. I mean, I love all of them. Glass Slipper I like for inside. Wish and Wisp are really pretty inside. For some more ethereal type images. For this one, I kind of want a little bit more drama. So we're going to run Misty Wood, and let me show you how this one works. Okay, now for this one, what I did is I created a sun flare in here. This can also be used if you have any sun flare in any pictures. You're going to find that you're going to use this action quite a bit. Here is the golden flare layer right here. Let's just click on this, and I'm going to show you if I turn it off and on. That's the one that really makes this flare happen. And I think it's a little bit too strong for this photo, so I'm going to turn it down just a touch. There's a little bit too much haze on her face. I like haze, but I like to be able to see my subject too. So if you see the haze right there, that's why. So I'm going to mask off a little bit on her face. 40%, I clicked on the box, masking it off. Now this is still too dramatic for me. So I'm going to click on Misty Wood over here, pull down the opacity to about, let's see where I like it. Let's see, maybe about 65%. So it's not quite as strong, especially because I'm going to be doing a few other things to this in a minute. So there's Misty Wood off, just Spellbound. Remember, we have Spellbound and Dramatize Run, and on. Let's go ahead and take a picture in our history panel. Flatten. Now, I think just for the heck of it, why don't we run a sort of vignette. Now, the vignette that I have in here, oh, you know, we forgot hazes. Here's some hazes too. The hazes you can run on top of anything, or you can run just alone by themselves. Woody Matte is really pretty. I like to use that inside. I like to use Orchid inside. Let's run Woody Matte outside and see what happens. That looks super cool. If you wanted more of a matte photo, this is the look that a lot of people are going to. And here, while we're on this, I'll show you a magic trick. Everybody asks me, what does Bring It Forward do? And I will show you. Now, here's the thing with Bring It Forward. You need to be clicked on your background layer. That's the way this action works. So you always need to click right here on your background layer before you run it. So let's go ahead and run Bring It Forward. It's going to pop her out of the haze, and I'll show you. There we go. Magic. I'm going to pull down this is a pretty heavy haze. So there's Bring It Forward. Let's take it off and on. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see. I just did that the long way. Off, on. That's Bring It Forward. Okay, but for the sake of this, I'm going to delete these two. Let's go ahead and run our vignette. So this smolder vignette that I have, the tones are made to match everything within the set. They're a little bit more purple, more maroon, with some orange hues inside of it. So it's not a darkening edge per se. Here we go. It darkens, but it gives it color. So you can kind of see that color tone that goes with the smolder vignette. Now this is way too dramatic for me. So I'm going to pull the opacity down to about 20 to 30%. There's off, and there's on. Okay, I'm going to take a snapshot. I'm going to close, flatten. Now the next thing that I'm going to do, I think that it's a little bit, I think the highlights are a little bit too bright in here. Partially because I didn't fix the highlights to start. Typically I would have started that in my raw image. I would have pulled the highlights down a little bit, fixed those, but for the sake of this tutorial, I wanted to show you how to fix those using the Save the Highlights action. Sometimes after you run actions, you'll find they get too bright or they get too dark. I tried to keep these so you don't have to worry about things becoming too bright or things becoming too dark. But I did include this in here because it's pretty common to have some background blown highlights in general, especially when you're shooting into windows or those sorts of things and you want to keep your subject exposed for correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and run Save the Highlights, and I'll show you what I would do for this one. So I have it masked off right now. So you can hit Command I and it turns it on. That just inverts your layer, Command I, or Control I if you have a PC. And there we go. You can see what happens. It kind of fixes those highlights in the background. Now, I don't like to fix highlights on skin if I don't have to. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and mask it off her skin at about 40%. It pulls the detail out, so you want to keep the detail in her face. So here we go. So there is save the highlights on and off, on and off. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take a snapshot, flatten. And the final thing that I would do for this image is bring it forward. My little friend here. Okay. And I would run this. This is at 100%. You can pull it down, which I would probably do for this image, to about 60%. So on, off. That's how I get my images to pop. Let's look at our history panel. Let's take a snapshot. Here's before. This is where we started. And after. Before and after. You can go back in any of your layers and you can see, you can go back and edit if you need to, if you have Photoshop. You got it? All right, there we go. Thank you for watching this long video. Of course, email me if you guys have any questions. I'll be doing some more before and afters, I'm assuming, throughout the year. So, all right, thank you. Have fun.